Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call this Utah Board of Water Resources meeting to order. Today is December 6, 2018. We are in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am Charles Holmgren, Chair of the Board, and welcome you all out in this festive Christmas season, and we are all gratified with the amount of moisture we've had thus far, and we're anxious to get more water as we're moving forward. So welcome to all of you this morning, and our first agenda item is the approval of the October 11th, 2018 board meeting minutes. Okay, Mr. Jim Lemon makes a motion to approve the October 11th board meeting minutes, and Norm Johnson seconds the motion. Any discussion on the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Our next agenda item is water supply report, and Mr. Troy Broston. Maybe not Troy.
Good morning. I'm not Troy. I'm Jordan Clayton. I'm a hydrologist in the same office.
Okay, Jordan. Welcome to you, and we'd appreciate very much you giving us a water report.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm a hydrologist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Thank you for your time this morning. Just give a brief talk talking about the current conditions, what we're seeing so far in the mountains, and outlook that we're seeing from other agencies so far this winter. Can you hear me all right? Is this all right volume-wise? Oh. Okay, thanks. All right. The screen's working all right?
Not yet.
Okay. Should I wait? Okay.
Being there.
All right, you didn't miss anything. Just again talking about the current conditions and then the outlook for this winter. Just a moment of background for those that are unfamiliar with the Snow Survey Agency. This is part of the NRCS, which is a branch of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Our mission is to measure the snowpack, precip, and some other meteorological characteristics, verify the data each day, and to create our water supply forecasts in the spring. If you haven't seen a SNOTEL site, this is what's recording our snowpack in the mountains right now. It's a combination of snowpack and telemetry. And again, we measure the snow water equivalent, snow depth, precip, and a whole bunch of other factors in the mountains. We have in Utah about 130 SNOTEL sites that are maintained by my office, and throughout the West there are about 900 of these sites. So, skipping back to what we're seeing on the ground right now in Utah, last week's storm did help. I'm not sure if you can resolve the colors on this graph, but what's shown are in different shades of green are the amounts of snow that we received over about the last 7 days. And you can see we've done pretty well, particularly on the Wasatch Plateau and down by the Tusher Mountains, but the state as a whole did very well in the last storm. We're more interested, of course, in snow water equivalent, and what you can see, this is basically the same graph, but this time I'm showing the amount of water in that snowpack as it fell throughout the state of Utah. Again, just over the last 7 days, we received about 2 to 3 inches of water in most mountainous locations. The eastern Uintas didn't do quite as well, but most of the rest of the state fared pretty well in this recent wave of storms. So, yes, it did help. We're off to a pretty good start. This is the current percent normal for our snow water equivalent in our major basins in Utah. And you can see the blue colors and the green colors. These are the colors we've been waiting to see the last couple winters. And it's nice to start off our winter in this context. And this definitely was an improvement upon the conditions from about a week ago where there was a lot more orange and red. So we're above average statewide, except for in southeastern Utah where we're very close to average. In terms of precipitation, we're above average throughout the state, and we were boosted by early October precipitation, and we've stayed above average, even though we were dry for a few weeks, we've stayed above average as a result of this most recent wave of storms. So this again are the percent normal precipitation levels now for all the major basins in Utah. This is a graph that shows how we compare with this time of year, and what's shown here is the current water year in the black, and then the normal conditions or the average conditions are shown by that center green line, and then you can see the full distribution of what we could eventually see for the remainder of the winter by those different probability distribution portions of the curve. And so we're really just a little bit above average in terms of our current water year relative to that green line for snow water equivalent right now, again, in our mountain locations. Off to a good start. This is how we compare with the last couple years. I'm not sure if you can see that that very low blue line. That was last year's water year. That's how it plots compared to this year. Obviously, that was a poor water year. The previous year is shown with sort of that light brown, and we're pretty much on track with 2016. And so we'll see if we wind up staying in that direction or not. Here's the projection graph from here forward. And I guess one take home from this graph is that we have a roughly equal chance of having a good or bad water year right now. It's way too early in the season to be able to say that we're going to have a good year with any confidence. You can see the projections. If we continue to have really outstanding snow, we're going to end up above average, but we have an equal probability of not going in that direction. So it's really too early to say with any confidence which way this winter is going to turn. This is a similar graph, but this is for accumulated precipitation. And again, the current water year is shown by that black line. You can see we really jumped off to a great start there at the very beginning of the water year with that early October precipitation. Because our water year starts October 1. We had a very steep increase in our water year to date precip. And then things kind of leveled off until about a week ago, and then you can see we picked up again in terms of our precip. This is a graph showing our temperatures measured in our mountain locations throughout the state. And again, the current water year is shown in black. I wanted to show this because I wanted to compare this with last year's temperatures, which are shown by that brown line. Last year's temperatures were largely warmer than average for this time of year, and you can see, maybe it's a little hard to resolve on the graph, but we're bouncing back and forth around the normal temperatures for this winter. So this is a much more normal temperature regime that we've experienced so far this winter. Last year was above average temperatures at this point in time. Soil saturation in the state, we're a little bit below the green line, which is average. We received that boost from that October moisture, but then things dried out again. And now we've gone into our snow accumulation season, so these soil moisture levels are essentially going to stay put for the rest of the winter until we see that snow melting. What that may wind up doing is that may wind up affecting our runoff efficiency. We tend to see a little bit of a lower runoff efficiency when we have drier soils, not surprisingly. So that is something that we'll want to watch as we get towards the runoff season in our forecasts. Our reservoir conditions are not great in Utah. What's shown on the right side there are the percent normal reservoir levels for this time of year, and unfortunately we do see a lot of orange and red for those different reservoirs. To put perspective on the size of the reservoirs, that graph that's in the upper left shows you the size of the reservoir in the light blue relative to how full it is in the dark blue. And obviously our larger reservoirs really pop out, some of which are doing better than others. The bottom left graph shows last year's conditions in the green bars relative to this year's conditions in the blue bars. And so we're really hoping for a big water year to replenish some of our storage, obviously. Same thing with stream flow. The stream flow conditions throughout the state are below average to well below average. And so this is something that's contributing to an overall low, what's called water availability index. We publish these numbers every month as part of our climate and water report. And I'm cheating a little bit here. Our next report is due out today, and so I don't have the current numbers. This is actually last month's table, but the numbers aren't going to be that different. And so I wanted to at least give you a sense for what we're dealing with. And these percentiles are, again, a combination of current reservoir and stream flow conditions, and this is a percentile relative to 50% being average and 100% being at the top. So we're well below average percentile-wise in a lot of our basins in terms of, again, reservoir storage and current stream flow. This does not account for our forecast for spring runoff. That's a different report that we'll publish in the spring when we get closer to that forecast season. How does Utah compare currently with other western states? Well, we're doing pretty well. A lot of the West is doing pretty well. The Pacific Northwest is not. But Utah is circled in the red there. We're at about 129% of snow water equivalent, so that's great. That compares with other western states like this, where we're in the green, a little bit above average. You can see Colorado and Montana, eastern Montana anyway, are doing pretty well. Wyoming's doing all right. The Pacific Northwest, not so much. Okay, again, the current conditions are summarized in our forthcoming water supply outlook, climate and water reports, and that will be out, I think, either today or tomorrow, and of course, we'll forward that to anyone that's interested. Just a summary of the current conditions. The snow water equivalent statewide is at about 127%, precip at about 133% of normal. Our soil moisture is a little bit low at about 44% saturated. Reservoir storage is only at about 50% statewide. Too early to make any conclusive statements about stream flow forecasts, and our water availability indices are between 10 and 50%. And then just a few quick comments about what we can expect for the remainder of the winter from other agencies' forecasts. One statement comes from NOAA. They publish El Nino forecasts, and I've circled what they published just a couple days ago. They said an El Nino is expected to form and continue through the northern hemisphere winter. There's an 80% of the chance of that, and into the spring, a better than 50% chance of that. So we're optimistic to have an El Nino this winter. This is just some of the modeling results supporting that. I won't get into these. What does that mean from NOAA's Climate Prediction Center? What does that mean for us in terms of precip and temperature? The expected precipitation over the next few months is shown in the bottom left. And you can see southeastern Utah gets clipped with a little bit of that green, which indicates they're suggesting above average precipitation for those months for southeastern Utah. There's an equal chance of having above average or below average precipitation for the rest of the state, according to these model results. It looks like warmer than average conditions, according to the graph that's on the right there. What that means in terms of our drought, this is published by the Drought Monitor, is that we will probably have persistence of drought for most of the state, with possible exception of improvement in the southeastern portion of the state. And this was published about 3 weeks ago, so hopefully we'll see some improvement, but this is what's currently available. And I think I'll skip these slides. I wanted to comment, if anyone's interested in obtaining snow data and wanted to reach out, I can follow up directly with any interested parties, but I just have a few slides that have to do with how to get data related to our snowpack. I'll fast forward through these so we can get to the questions if there are any of those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any questions from the board for Mr. Clayton? If not, not to go over what you've already presented, but I find it quite interesting to get on your website almost on certainly a weekly basis, if not daily, and see how things are in the Bear Basin. Mm-hmm. Appreciate your information very much.
Absolutely. And please always reach out if there's anything we can follow up with.
Okay. Yep. I don't know if I'm wise enough to ask questions of you guys or not, but anyway, appreciate your report, Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I neglected to mention as we started the meeting today, Mr. Randy Crozier is not with us today. He was curtailed and was not able to make the meeting today. So I'd like to make that notice. And just a gentle reminder that as we speak into our microphones, make sure your light is on and speak closely to the microphone so that we are being recorded and televised, and this information is available online for later viewing for your late night sleeping pleasure. So anyway, we ready to go with that? I'd like to recognize some guests that we have in the audience today. We have Laura Vernon from Forestry State Lands. Well, Laura, thank you for being here. I should know that terminology better since we are in the division. Samantha Unruh from University of Utah and the Utah Rivers Council. Welcome to you. Christopher Jones is with us today. Appreciate you being here, Christopher. And Hunt is with us today. Mr. Nick Sean Scow. Excuse me for your writing's better than mine, but I couldn't get a W out of that, Mr. Scow. And Mr. Richard Bay, General Manager from Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, is with us today. Aaron Wade is with us today. Mike Wilson is with us today. And Terry Warner from HDR is with us today. And Elizabeth Waite from Utah House of Representatives is with us today. Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here today. Our next agenda item are feasibility reports. And with us today for the Davis and Weber Canal Companies, have Mr. Rick Smith, who is the General Manager of the Davis-Weber Canal Company, Nathan Smith with JUB Engineers, and Mr. Scott Paxman, who is the President of the Board of the Davis-Weber County's Canal Company. So welcome to you, gentlemen. And Tom Cox will make a presentation for feasibility report. So Tom, if you will, please.
If I can figure out technology here. We got it up and running, it looks like. So the Davis and Weber County's Canal Company, they provide about 60,000 acre-feet of water annually for irrigation in the Davis and Weber counties area, and they provide their service area is about 40,000 acres. They cover a lot of area in that area. They primarily get their water from the Davis-Weber Canal. However, they do have some shares in various irrigation companies where they draw water also. Back in the late 80s, the applicant received funding from the board to put a secondary irrigation system in the communities of Clinton, Kaysville, Layton, and West Point. Most recently, they've been here for some funding for a project that helped their area in the Clinton West Point area. Now they're returning today to address some issues in the Kaysville area. So if you look at the map, it shows their service area in Kaysville and the south part of Layton. In the eastern part, maybe I can get the mouse going so I can point at some things here. Is that showing up on yours? Okay. So the area in the green is their East Kaysville service area, and the blue dot in the most right corner is their Kaysville East Reservoir, and that is what serves that service area. The majority of the service area is their West Kaysville area, and it is supplied by kind of the triangular blue shaped pond to the north, and that's on Church Street, and that's connected to the system with a 3-mile, 24-inch diameter pipeline. Over the years, the Kaysville area has more than doubled in population, and so that 24-inch pipeline is now undersized and restricts the flow to that service area, which causes low pressure areas, especially between Fairfield Road and I-15. So the applicant is here before the board today with a proposed project to install a pressure booster pump station by Kaysville Irrigation, and that's sort of in the middle. That Kaysville Reservoir is owned and operated by Kaysville Irrigation Company, but the applicant owns quite a few shares in that company, so they're allowed to use some of that water, and they're proposing to put a booster pump station there to add to the supply in that West Kaysville area to address those low pressure issues. And the plan is to construct the booster pump station with a capacity of 10 second feet with the ability to upgrade that to 30 CFS in the future to address the growth in the area. So the project benefits, well, it will eliminate the low pressure in the West Kaysville area and conserve an estimated 300 acre-feet of water annually, and that's based on estimates of how much the current users are overwatering to compensate for the low pressure. The estimated project cost is $4 million, and it's proposed the board provide 85% of that amount, up to $3.4 million. And the staff recommends that the board provides that, and that the project will be purchased at 3% interest over 10 years with annual payments of $398,600. And that's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Paxman, Mr. Smith, do you have additional information that you will provide to the board, please?
I don't believe you. You can hear me?
Push the button, see if you got a green
The
light.
green light screen.
I don't know if you can hear me now, but again, we appreciate your consideration in this. And again, as we all know, that growth has happened. And in this Kaysville system, I don't believe there's been any capital improvements since the original system went in. So this is a major project for us in this area.
Hey, questions from the board for Ms. Weber? Seeing none? Stevens?
I'll make a motion, but before I do that, I'll just indicate that I have met, with staff and with Davis Weber County Canals companies and the project. So I'll make the motion that the board authorize 80% of the project cost up to $3,400,000, and that the project be purchased at 3% interest over 10 years with annual payments of approximately $398,600.
Mr. Stevens, just a question on your motion. Did you say 80 or 85%?
I said 80, I meant 85.
Come on.
Kyle? There's a second to the motion.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Jim Lemon seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the project number RE 416? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to the motion? Motion is unanimous. You're approved. So thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. Our next agenda item is Blanding City, project number RE 415. And we have with us today Mr. Jeremy Redd, City Manager. Mr. Jason Bradford, Engineer. Vincent Allen and Luce, and Mr. Marcus Keller with Zion's Vice President of Zion's Public Finance from Blanding. Welcome to you, gentlemen, and Ben Merritt is going to make a presentation for us. So, Ben, if you will, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The city of Blanding, located down in San Juan County, has repeatedly experienced short high-intensity precipitation events over the last several years, which have exceeded the capacity of the storm sewer system and have caused flooding in the city. I've got here a few photos to show you. In the foreground here, you can see some inlets to the storm sewer system, which are overrun. The water flows over the highway into the post office there. And then down by that house, you can sort of see behind that black vehicle. Here's a shot of that home. Water typically runs along the base of this house and then directly down from the photo through that empty lot there. It flows over another street through a few more lots, and then it hits this. You can see that berm in the center of the photo there, and the mobile home there in the background. And there's also a home directly behind the photo that the water typically flows between. And it also pools down here by Highway 191, or Highway 191, which is the center street in town, before it flows to a, I believe it's a detention pond on there on the other side of the highway. The city would like to install approximately 19 additional manholes, about 5,600 feet of storm sewer pipe, and additional inlet boxes to pass the storm waters more successfully. The total project is expected to cost about $1,598,000, and staff recommends that the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $1,359,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $82,000, including reserves. And this is staff's report.
Thank you, Ben. Gentlemen, Blanding, would you like to add some additional information for us?
I would if possible. Thanks for hearing our application. I appreciate Ben's help with the application. He's done a great job, came down to Blanding. I wish I had some pictures when it was flooding, but unfortunately, every time we're trying to mitigate the damage, and I haven't been able to get any pictures. So you could see from some of those photos the mud that was left from the flooding, but I didn't get any of the active flooding. One thing, as we've gone through the application and some of the information, we did about 10 years ago add a stormwater utility, and we then 5 years ago raised that 400%. So now we charge $4 per ERU to each customer in town to help with these types of issues. So we're working on that. What I would like to ask for is a 25-year payment term as opposed to the 20-year, if that's possible, just to help with cash flow in that company.
Hey, any other comments? Gentlemen, good? Any questions from the board for Blanding City?
Actually get rain down there?
We do. The problem is when we get it, it comes all at once. If it came in a nice gentle rainstorm, that would be fantastic.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Johnson?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion from the board and authorize 85% of the project cost up to $1,359,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $66,000.
Second to the motion. Kyle Stevens seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The flooding goes away. And the rain doesn't go away.
That's right.
Our next agenda item is project for Payson City, RL 582. And joining us this morning is Mr. Bill Wright, Mayor of Payson City. Sarah Hubbs, Finance Director for Payson City. David Tuckett, City Engineer, Payson. Travis Jockman, Payson City Public Works Director. Brent Arns, Assistant Engineer for Payson City. And Brian Baker, Zion's Public Finance, Payson City. So, welcome to you folks this morning. Quite a crew with you. We will turn the time to Russell Hadley to make a presentation to the board.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Payson City serves culinary water to about 5,800 connections and secondary water to 4,600 connections. Culinary water is obtained from wells and springs in Payson Canyon, while secondary water is obtained primarily from Strawberry Highline Canal, as well as from wells, Petite Neat Creek, and treated sewage effluent. Culinary storage consists of two 2.5 million gallon and 1.6 million gallon tanks. Secondary storage consists of two concrete ponds with 33 acre-feet total capacity. The city has had 5 previous projects with the board, and all have been repaid. The city has a new recreational baseball and soccer complex that requires large amounts of secondary water. This new demand puts a strain on the secondary system pressure during peak watering times. Additionally, there are currently new residential developments approved with a total of 1,500 new homes called the Arrowhead Development, shown on the map in the green area. The city's hydraulic models show its secondary transmission lines in those areas are not capable of providing for the expected new demand and future growth. There's only about 6-inch pipelines on the north side of town, so they're going to need a bigger pipeline going out there. The city would like to isolate the new recreational complex from the secondary system because of the high volume of water it uses. To accomplish this, it plans to rejuvenate an old failed slotted casing city well. The well was previously abandoned because it drew in large amounts of sand, causing it to constantly go through pumps and bowls. The city plans to install a modern well screen and gravel pack to keep the sand out, thereby rejuvenating the well, hopefully back to a 2,000 gallon per minute sustainable yield. A 300 horsepower motor, pump and motor, and new electrical controls will also be added. The city also plans to install larger secondary transmission lines in the area where large developments and future growth are planned, and install secondary meters on all existing secondary connections. And currently there's 300 meters in new subdivisions. They are required for new developers to install meters, and they are not being read at the moment. And Hansen Allen Luce will provide design, construction, engineering services. And here's a picture of their existing well house, and that's where the well is that they're going to be redeveloping the well. And I was not paid to give free advertising to Woodbury Corporation. The billboard, just they're putting in a new strip mall behind the pump house there. So. This is one of their ponds, the larger one. Another one of their ponds up in the canyon, up in Payson Canyon. The Strawberry Highline Canal runs all through the area, up above the town, city. Oh, the new ballpark, one of them. There's several of them, and soccer fields and some additional ball fields are still going to be built. Benefits of the project include expansion of the existing secondary system to provide for new growth, isolating the new recreational complex to eliminate a bottleneck on system pressure, allow some redundancy on the secondary system in case of emergencies, and installation of secondary meters to conserve water. Also, the city plans on doing smart billing, which will encourage future conservation. And an educational component will be added to the billings in the future. As shown, the cost is estimated at $10,570,000. Of that cost, almost $6 million, the cost is for metering of 4,600 homes. And as shown, the board is requested to provide 85% funding, or $8,985,000. Financial benefits from the project are minimal. Based on the board's water system affordability guidelines, residents of Payson City could pay up to $51.50 monthly for water, and as shown, the cost of water with the proposed project would put the city above the affordability guideline. Staff recommends the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $8,985,000 and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $526,000 including reserves. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Russell. Did I hear you say at the bottom line $10,570,000, or did you say 10 million?
10,500,000. Did I say?
I think.
Oh yeah. Let's go with 10,570,000.
Sounds good, Russell. Appreciate that. You folks from Payson like to add further comment, please?
Just a couple of comments. We appreciate the board considering the request. Our secondary system was put in the late 80s, early 90s, and back when we had about 10,000 population, and so we haven't had a lot of maintenance work on that since that time. But back in that time, there were no meters that could adequately meter dirty water. So we look forward, and our council's on board with metering now that there is the technology to meter it. Hopefully it'll spark some conservation and we'll be more efficient. But these projects are good projects for us, and we hope the board will consider it.
Other comments from Payson?
Just like Dave, our city manager, said, you know, with the growth that we're experiencing, just like everywhere else in the state, you know, without doing some of these, when Hanson, Allen, and Luce ran our model, if our current system was trying to do that Arrowhead project, the pressures actually went in the negative in the model, so we couldn't even deliver water without doing one of the projects. And then just with the pressure issues we have with the ball fields, if we can take them off of that regular system, that will help our residents so we can all water at night, because right now we require our larger users, the school and our recreation facilities, to water during the day, which is obviously inefficient when it's 95 degrees. So that's kind of what we're trying to fix with a couple of these projects minus the meters. So.
Hey. Other comments?
Just like to comment as a new mayor of Payson, this is very important for our city, and there is substantial support by myself as the mayor and also the city council.
Thank you for that comment. Questions from the board for the Payson group?
It was mentioned that the meters were not currently being read. I assume the new ones being installed, that they all will be read?
They're not being read, or they are being read, but we're just not billing the residents that have those meters. But we are collecting the data so that we can have a tiered structured rate once we get that.
Yeah, we have applied. We've applied for some grant money, and the money we've been able to get, we've put in the meters and the backbone to the reading AMI system. And so this would just finish out that project and be able to meter everything.
Additional questions? Jim?
I was wondering, part of the guidelines for us is that they're advertising so that your people know, or are you going to do something to encourage them to conserve some way?
Yes, and we've done that in the past as well, but we will have some education campaigns to go on to encourage people to conserve, and put public meetings to have rate structures and things put in place when these meters are in.
Thank you. And I believe Russell included that in his presentation too. Wayne?
An interesting use of word, that well had been abandoned, is what you said, Russell. That has legal connotations. Was that formally abandoned, or do you still have approval with your water rights to continue to use the well, or?
We do have approval. It is on one of our wells. When we transfer water, we transfer to all the wells. We just haven't used that well as much, but all the water rights can be used in all of our 5 wells.
Hey, that's a poor choice of words. I believe the well is full of about 100 feet of sand or something. Yeah, it just is.
Maybe we ought to say it's currently not being used.
Yeah, not being used.
Yes, Director Millis.
I want to thank the city actually for coming in and putting the effort out to put these meters in, and what a great conservation effort this is, and you're really the first of a group of many that we hope will come in and take advantage of the board's program to help get these secondary meters installed with the reduced interest rate and things like that. So thank you much.
Any other questions? Mr. Farrell.
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion that the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $8,985,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 20 years for annual payments of approximately $526,000, including reserves.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Ibsen seconds the motion. Any further discussion on Payson City's project? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Russell. Our next agenda item is committal of funds. And our first application is RE 414 Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company. And we have with us today again Mr. Neil Anderson, president of the Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company, and Paul Hansen, vice president of Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company. So good to see you gentlemen again.
Good to be here.
Thank you. And Maurice Egbert.
Yes.
Will make a presentation.
All right. Oh, is that new? All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is for the Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company. The project was authorized in the last board meeting. And they've done all the requirements they need to do to complete the requirements to receive the funding for this project. In the meantime, there have been some adjustments. Oh, you can't use the arrow, I see. So what I've got is I've got two maps, and I'll kind of switch them. This was the original plan where that red line is to pipe that canal. There were some issues with seepage and also safety at this time now, some houses in through there. And as you watch that red line, I'm going to switch the map. There we go. And so I've changed it's changed to a blue line. That is still the 42-inch canal. When you get up to that north-south road, UDOT required the company to actually go under the road and have their inlet on the east side of the road rather than on that west side. And then the company realized that if they put a little more pipe, it could help an adjacent landowner through there as well. And then they also have a lateral. There's a red dash line. I wish I could point to it for you. It is going north-south, and that was another scenario where they realized they kind of had an emergency of a project, and as they could sit back and think about it, hey, we're there, let's put in a little bit more pipe. So it has changed the cost, which is why we've asked the members, the company to be here today. The authorized sharing was for a cost estimate of $405,000. The proposed cost sharing is for a cost estimate now of $556,000, with the board cost share at 85% for $472,600. And so staff recommends the board commit 85% of the project cost up to the $472,600, and that the project be purchased at 0% over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $23,630. That's staff's report.
Thank you, Marisa. Gentlemen, do you have any comments you'd like to add to Marisa's presentation?
I don't think we have much other than that it's a good project and moving forward. So,
okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Seeing no questions, Mr. Farrell.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion the board commits 85% of the project cost up to $472,600, then that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with an annual payment of approximately $23,630.
For a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Al Stevens seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the project? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is Muddy Creek Irrigation Company, project number RE405. And Mr. Merrill Johansson and Tuttle Engineering, Mr. Glendon E. Johnson, owner of Castle Valley Partners, the Muddy Creek Irrigation Company, and Mr. Jim Faver, board member of Muddy Creek Irrigation Company, and the great Craig Johansson, one of my mentors and emeritus member of this board. So welcome to you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And Jacqueline Pacheco will be making the presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The board authorized Muddy Creek Irrigation Company's project back in the March 2018 meeting. There are approximately 107 shareholders in the company, but they are divided into the Emory series and the Moore Group Independent Canal with 93 and 14 shareholders respectively. This project will directly benefit the Moore Group Independent Canal. The project is located near Emory City in Emory County, and the purpose of the project is to replace approximately 1.9 miles of open canal and 2.8 miles of existing non-pressurized and deteriorating pipe with a new pressurized pipeline. And it is depicted in this red line on the map. The cost estimate and share remain the same as authorized. Staff recommends the board commit 65.1% of the project cost up to $1,671,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over 23 years with annual payments of approximately $81,700. That is staff's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. You gentlemen like to make further comment on Jacqueline's presentation? Come on, Craig.
He can always pontificate.
We miss you.
I miss you guys. No, we don't have any changes to the request, and we appreciate your considering our project.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Johnson?
It's good to get everybody equalized down there, right? The board would recommend, or I would recommend the board commit 65.1% of the project cost up to $1,671,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over 23 years with an annual payments of approximately $81,700.
Is there a second to Norm? Steve Farrell seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Bet. I'd like to recognize, I believe it's Thea Holcomb in the audience today. Thank you for visiting us, Thea. Our next agenda item is the Providence Logan Irrigation Company, project number RE191. And Todd Stoneley is going to make that presentation. We have with us today Mr. Steve Thunnell, board member of the Providence Logan Irrigation Company. Thunnell.
Tanel.
Tanel.
Make it hard.
Oh, I've
It's a Swedish
spent
name.
enough time
so
in
you have
Cache
to-
Valley, I ought to get it
You
right.
have to think Swedish.
Oh, well, that's the problem. That's because I'm Swedish too, you know. So, anyway, we'll ask Todd Stoneley to make a presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Holmgren and members of the board. In 2005, the applicant requested financial assistance from the board to replace approximately 900 feet of box culvert with 24 and 30-inch HDPE pipe. Work was completed in 2008, and the project has been providing efficient delivery of water since that time. The applicant is currently current on all payments to date and has a remaining balance of approximately $125,300. The applicant has recently experienced problems with its distribution system that require repairs of approximately $18,600. This will substantially deplete the reserves that the company has accumulated and will make it difficult to manage cash flow in the coming year. To ease this burden, the applicant is requesting that future annual payments of the project be delayed by 1 year. The repayment terms of the original agreement were 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of $8,300, and the final payment was to be due in is due in 2032. Staff recommends the board amend the existing agreement to state there will be no payment due in 2018 and that payments will resume in 2019 with the final payment due in 2033. This is staff's report.
Thank you, Todd. Steve, would you like to add anything to Todd's report?
Maybe just some details about what we're doing. We've got leakage coming out of the canal on a side hill that's there in our project, and we're worried about that causing other problems, and there's homes below that would be affected if we didn't do something, so we don't want to wait for something to happen. And this money that we're going to pay, the $18,600, is going to provide access to 1,200 feet of that pipeline that's overgrown on a side hill, and then we're replacing 80 feet of pipe that has an old concrete culvert. So that's the gist of it. Appreciate your hearing us.
Okay. Questions from the board? Mr. Tennell? Seeing none, ask Blaine if he would make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board amend the existing agreement to state that there will be no payment due in 2018 and that the payments will resume in 2019 with the final payment due in 2033.
Thank you, Blaine. Is there a second to the motion? Kyle Stevens seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for helping me with my Swedish, Mr. Tennell. Our next agenda item is North Utah County Water Conservancy District, or Conservation District, whatever, project number RC054. And Mr. Tom Cox will make the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the North Utah County Water Conservancy District owns and operates 5 dams in the North Utah County area. All 5 of them have been rated high hazard by the Division of Water Rights. The board has committed grant money for the upgrade of all of those dams. To date, Silver Lake Flat, Tibble Fork, the work has been completed. The work on Battle Creek and Grove Creek is in progress and will be finished by the end of the year. And it's anticipated that the work on the final dam, the Dry Creek Dam, will begin this spring. During the construction of Grove Creek Dam, a couple change orders were submitted. One is including another slide gate in the outlet structure, which will allow the applicant to operate the dam more efficiently. Doing this and those other changes has brought the amount of the board's current cost share right up to the amount that's been previously committed. So just to give a little cushion while they finish, the district is requesting that the board commit an additional $47,000 in dam safety grants, just because at the end of the project, there's always a reconciliation about the units, the number of units of material that's been placed, and so the cost can go up or go down a little bit. So the staff is recommending the board commit the $47,000 in dam safety grants, and that the existing funding contract be amended to state that the board will provide 31.5% of the project cost, up to a total amount of $685,000. And that's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Questions from the board for Tom on this project? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Chairman?
Mr. Farrell.
Make the motion, the board commits an additional $47,000 in dam safety grant funds and amends the funding contract to state the board will provide 31.5% of the project construction cost up to $685,000.
For second to the motion. Mr. Lemon seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tom. And our next agenda item is Rockville Town Ditch Company, project number RE313. And there is no staff report, but the staff recommends that the project be withdrawn from further consideration by the board. So I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Lemon.
Chairman, I would make the motion that we withdraw this project from further consideration by the
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second that.
Johnson seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I recognize Representative Waite indicates that she would like to address the board. And if Representative Waite would like to come forward to address the board, we'd be willing to accept her comments. Thank you for coming today.
Well, and is this on? Yep. Okay. So I came to observe and to learn. I'm on the board of a little tiny private water company in Midway that serves some recreational properties. And I've also so through that, I've become more and more aware and interested in the work that the Water Division and the Division of Natural Resources does. But this is my first time to attend one of these board meetings, and I wanted to thank you for your work and just acknowledge you and introduce myself, especially, I think, Mr. Farrell, because you're up there, and I think the Midway Irrigation Company is connected with the Snake Creek water system. So I'm glad to see you. Anyway, thank you for your work. Thank you for your time. That's what I wanted to say, and thank you for the opportunity to say it.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate your interest in this division and this board. All right, our next agenda item is the Lake Powell Pipeline Report, and we'll have Mr. Joel Williams make a
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We talked last time about the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission making its jurisdictional decision on the project, and that decision resumed the comment period for prior to the work on the environmental impact statement. And so that 60-day comment period ended last month on November 19th. We had, FERC received over 200 comments regarding the project, and we have been busy reviewing those comments and preparing for the next period, which is the 45-day response period, where we are able to respond to comments. And so we are working on preparing those. That response period ends January 3rd. And so we are working to get those comments reviewed and prepare responses based on the topics that were submitted. We've also been, well, I guess following the 45-day comment period, we anticipate then that Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, through their environmental consulting firm, Louis Berger, would begin preparation of the environmental impact statement that they, according to the timeline that they've indicated previously, would be released in about 6 months from that time. So we're looking forward to that next step in the process of getting that environmental impact statement out, which then prompts further public comment and response following that. We have been coordinating, continuing to meet with the Kaibab Band of the Paiute tribe as one of the alignments would cross their reservation. We've been meeting with them for quite some time, and as we met with them last week, they requested that we enter a confidentiality agreement with them due to some of the sensitive nature of the items that they would like to remain confidential. Some of these being cultural items of cultural significance to them that would be disclosed during these negotiations as we work with them. And so I recommend this, staff's recommendation for, as far as that confidentiality agreement, is that the board enter into this agreement with the Kaibab Band of the Paiute Indians at the request of the band to protect sensitive tribal information disclosed during negotiations for the Lake Powell Pipeline project. Other than that, our work will continue. Like I said, busy trying to address these comments and get moving forward into the next phase of the project. This is my report at this time. I don't know if there are any questions from the board.
Thank you, Joel. Questions from the board for Joel on the Lake Powell Pipeline? If not, we need to take some action on specifically regarding the Kaibab Band of Paiute Indians. And Mr. Lemon, would you like to make a motion?
I would make the motion that the board enter into a confidentiality agreement with the Kaibab Band of Paiute Indians at the request of the band to protect sensitive tribal information disclosed during negotiations for the Lake Powell Pipeline project.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Kyle Stevens seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is agenda item number 8, and that is regarding Bear River Development and Utility Corridor Preservation, middle of funds. And Maurice Egbert.
Yes.
And Angela Martin and Hal Johnson will participate.
Thanks, Angela.
In Maurice's presentation as well.
If you sit there, then you got the mics. Barbara likes it when you use the mics. So does our IT guy. All right, I gotta, sorry, open, can I close this? Oops, sorry. All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just kind of some background. The Bear River Development Act that was passed by the Utah Legislature in 1991 and amended in 2006 directs the Division of Water Resources to administer that act, and that's found under Code Chapter 73, 26. Sorry, Chapter 26. As stated in Utah Code 59-12-103, sales tax has been deposited into the Water Resources Conservation and Development Fund for costs pertaining to, in particular, acquisition of land and rights-of-way as outlined in the Bear River Development Act. The Utah Division of Water Resources and the Utah Transit Authority entered into a memorandum of agreement on August 30th, 2018 to partner in the preservation of a shared transit and utility corridor through Box Elder County. And we've got kind of a depiction of what that could look like on the screen there. UTA and DWRE would like to acquire property ahead of housing. And it's not the best graphic here, because they left it to me to throw on the house. So, but this is what we're trying to avoid is staying ahead of those houses. This will help reduce future impacts to landowners and has a potential cost savings benefit. We've also been working with the Box Elder County planners and the communities through this area. The utility right-of-way could be used possibly as a linear park feature or as part of a development for open space requirements, and that's something we've talked to some of the developers about. Staff recommends that the Board of Water Resources commit $5 million from the Conservation and Development Fund for the acquisition of land and rights-of-way for the Bear River development, and that is staff's report.
Thank you very much, Marisa. Angela or Hal, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Hal Johnson with UTA would just say we appreciate the partnership with the Division of Water Resources, and we think this is a great example of two agencies working together.
Angela, do you have anything to add?
Angela Martin with HDR. We're the consultant to Water Resources. We're just excited for the opportunity to help Water Resources acquire right-of-way.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Yes, Juliet Tennert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe somewhat unrelated, but just because I'm curious, what is the timing for the UTA work?
We have some funding through in Box Elder County, it's the second quarter in sales tax, and so we're working to acquire property with that. There's no time frame for the construction of a future transit corridor, or the operation of the corridor, but we're working on the right-of-way preservation at this time.
Any other questions from the board? Are there any in the audience that would like to make public comment regarding this agenda item? Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Will you please state your name and who you represent?
Will do. Thanks, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name's Nick Scow. I'm the Conservation Director with Utah Rivers Council, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk today. I fully appreciate the long-term planning obligations of the division and their staff, having to look forward and make sure we're not using eminent domain on a project like this is a very wise use of staff time and planning, and appreciate the difficult nature of that. I just wanted to say that in regards to Bear River development, the public and organizations like ours are getting really mixed signals from the division. Over the last year and a half or so, the division has told the media and the public numerous times that the project has been pushed far back. I've read into 2040, 2050, and 2065, different numbers. And that creates the perception that I hear from many people that the project is dead and that no one needs to worry about it and it's not being advanced. An article from last year in the Deseret News says state water officials say they no longer believe Bear River Development Project needs to be in place by 2040. Utah Public Radio had an article this year about how DWRE has postponed the estimated Bear River Development Project well into 2030, 2035, or that's what it was going to be. Now it's 2040, 2050, 2060, and we have the potential for major conservation with secondary water metering, ag conversion, and other things. You know, and then also, when we talk about Bear River development, that's been pushed out to 2050. That was in the Standard Examiner, paper out of Ogden. And water managers declared they could push back developing the river by decades thanks to secondary metering and conservation efforts. This is all great, and I think that seeing the board put money towards cities like Payson that are trying to meter secondary water systems, that's a really great use, I think, of this taxpayer money. However, also within the last year, we've seen the division file for a major water right for 400,000 acre feet out of Bear Lake, which is, according to the article, water that will go to municipal water providers in Cache, Bucks Elder, Weber, Davis, Salt Lake counties. That's pretty much Bear River development as far as I'm concerned. We've also now seen the division acquiring land with $5 million for this right-of-way. There's apparently a new report that the division's been working on with Bowen Collins, their consultant, that's due sometime out early next year. So we're spending a lot of money advancing Bear River development as far as I can see, and probably spending a lot less money on pursuing alternatives and conservation. In addition to that, Rocky Mountain Power will file their relicensing application with FERC for Cutler Dam in March, which, as we all know, is now related to Bear River development, as they stated in their desire to trap more water behind the dam and possibly be part of providing municipal supplies to those 4 counties. So in addition to that, the water conservancy districts are spending money on acquiring land and water array, or water, not water rights, but land and right-of-way. And so all I wanted to say that while I appreciate the division has to take a long-term view on a project like this, and appreciate the careful planning work that they're trying to do, if the division is really sincere and wants the public and organizations like ours to believe that they're working to push the project into the future, then we should be spending a lot more money and staff time on some of these alternatives. And considering the very real and palpable concern about this project that the public has, particularly concerning the impacts to the Great Salt Lake, the division could do a better job at communicating to the public and decision makers what they're really up to and what their priorities are. Really, the way I see it, the division is putting out a very pro-conservation messaging, while also, with the other hand, pursuing very costly water development, and largely not in a very public manner. So I really I thank you for your work and your service to the state, and thank you for the opportunity to comment today. I do look forward to seeing the 2019, or the report coming out hopefully in early 2019, and hope you'll send us a copy, and wish you all a happy holidays. Thank you.
On the top of the list, Nick.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Scow. We appreciate your input on Bear River development and water issues in general in the state of Utah. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. My name is Richard Bay. I serve as General Manager of Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. And a couple thoughts I would like to share with the Board. First of all, the Bear River Development Project is very important in our future planning. And it is worthy of the action that the Board is considering today. My second thought is that the Act contemplates that the state portion of the project would be the raw water, the untreated water portion. And the infrastructure to develop finished water would rest fully upon the shoulders of the agencies or the areas that are allocated water from the state water project. Because of that, the Bear River Water supply source for Jordan Valley in our planning would fully be finished water. I believe that in the case of Weber Basin Water Conservancy District, that is the same. Over the last 20-plus years, Jordan Valley and Weber Basin have collaborated in right-of-way acquisition for the finished water portion that would be on our shoulders, in addition to signing a contract with the state for purchase of state project water. Our experience over the last 20 years is we have been acquiring right-of-way through western Weber County, western Davis County, Salt Lake County. We have barely been able to stay ahead of land development. In some cases, we've been able to purchase easements or land in fee that is undeveloped. In some cases, we've been forced to purchase rows of lots in subdivisions that have just been approved by the cities, but just ahead of construction of homes. In some cases, we've had to buy homes. And so I believe that the collaborative effort of the division working with UTA is very commendable. I believe that advance acquisition of right-of-way of this nature well in advance, even decades in advance, is a service to the public because it minimizes disruption to business owners and homeowners in the future. It also minimizes disruption to the cities and towns in their planning efforts so that acquisition can be done timely and in coordination with plans for linear parks or trails. Because of this, I would recommend to the board approval of the action that is recommended by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bay, for your input and your comments. Are there other public that would like to comment? Yes, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having the meeting, and I think we all agree. My name is Ken Hunt. I'm from South Jordan, Daybreak. I think that the more information that we have, the better. The way that I look at this project and this proposal for Bear River is the analogy I would like to make in Daybreak is where I live, everyone in their basement has a 10-foot ceiling, and they have utilities already set up for finished basements, water, sewer, and electrical. And what's the propensity then of people finishing their basements? Well, anecdotal evidence is over 90% of the residents of Daybreak have finished basements. So by doing this, by allocating planning and funds for this, what is the statistical evidence that the plan will not go through once those things are done? We need to do due diligence, and if we're going to dedicate planning and money for it, what is the propensity of it not happening? I think when we look at it, there's a high degree of reliability that this project will go through. So I would think that if we're going to do it, we need to look back at previous projects when the planning and funding was allocated, were they not followed through on? And I think the aspect of a taxpayer is that you want to see that happen. What is the degree of it going to happen? That if we're going to have planning and set-asides for this utility, that it will happen. Because I think the evidence will show that once this goes through, it's a done deal. And that shouldn't be the case. I thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate the open meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt, for your input and your comments. Anyone else like to comment? Yes, sir.
Good morning, and thanks for giving me a minute. I'm Chris Jones. I live in Irrigation Township, so I know what it's like to live on a well that sometimes either collapses or some of my neighbors have gone dry. But my question is really about the Bear River diversion. And I had the dubious, I guess, distinction to get out into the lake where Salt Lake City dumps all its sewage. It was not a pleasant sight or smell. So it made me wonder if the Bear River really is diverted quite a bit and Salt Lake County is not going to stop pumping raw sewage or treated sewage into the lake, what is that going to do to homeowner values when the stench starts to waft over toward the I-15 corridor, if you know what I mean? In other words, have you been thinking about both the housing experience, but also the ecology of the lake when there's a much higher percentage of sewage in the Great Salt Lake than there has been in the past? Thanks. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, for your input and your comments. Anyone else like to address the board? Seeing none. Entered.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. How does it work? Do I get to discuss my motion before or after I make the motion?
Well, you make your motion, then we can discuss.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Mr. Chair, I am going to move that we commit the $5 million from the Conservation and Development Fund for the acquisition of land and rights of way for Bear River development.
Is there a second to the motion?
Oh, can I discuss it before we second?
Would you like to discuss?
Yeah,
it
I just
before we
want to make the point that why I'm making this motion. So, I mean, I think that in the grand scheme of things, this is a relatively small investment now, and we know, for a couple of reasons. So, relatively small investment that can preserve options into the future, and so we see that if we can make these investments now, we can preserve our options into the future. In the more immediate term, it could potentially be a community asset. So we've talked a little bit about maybe making these lands available for trails, and then also I think that making a small investment now could potentially minimize major disruption in the future. And so that's why I'm making the motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any discussion on Ms. Tennert's comments to her motion? None. Is there a second to her motion?
Second that motion, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Lemon seconds the motion. Is there additional discussion following the second? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Our next agenda item is planning report. And Josh Palmer, my Joels and my Joshes, Josh Palmer will make a presentation. E-presentation.
First, I'd just like to give a special thanks to Carmen McDonald for helping with this slideshow. Can we turn the sound up? No, we don't have sound coming through. Try again. Should I try again? Paul. Okay. Let's see if we can get this running. I don't think we have sound coming through. Well, we try to get this going. My name is Joshua Palmer. I'm the Water Efficiency, Education, and Engagement Section Manager for the Utah Division of Water Resources. Early in my career, at the Utah Division of Water Resources, I watched a presentation about tree ring studies and how they could help us understand the hydrologic history of a specific river basin. I found the presentation fascinating, but I remember seeing a line graph showing hydrologic water years from the 1400s to closer to the present, and it looked like a child had scribbled between the X and Y axis. It was really confusing. I thought to myself, it was so important that I wanted to be able to present it in a way that was accessible to more people. So I had the idea to convert the tree ring data into music by dividing the hydrologic range by the number of notes within the key at which we wanted to compose, the trees wanted to compose the music. And I'm hoping we can get to a point where we can actually hear this thing. Okay. Come on. No, it's not working. Here, you know what? I'm going to try something else. So instead of I just think we're not able to get sound to work at all through this right now. And so I'll actually send this out at a later time. So eventually I was able to allocate a note to each hydrologic year. I worked with my sister, April Palmer, to create what you will eventually hear. And it makes it so that you can hear with the high notes, you can hear the high hydrologic years. You can hear the good, when we got a really good snowpack. And then with the low notes, you can hear when you're in drought. And so you can actually hear when you have multiple low notes, you can hear when there's been drought, and multiple high years, you can hear when there were multiple successful hydrologic years. When you think about, and as I'll show you later, when you think about each note representing the hydrology of a year, you can actually hear the history of a region. We can hear the years of plentiful and the years of sacrifice. You can hear the years where animals had more than enough vegetation due to the plentiful water, and the years they had to work harder to find food. You can hear the years the farmers had a bountiful crop and the years that they suffered greatly. I've worked for the Utah Division of Water Resources for about 4 years. During these times, I've experienced both incredibly fun and challenging times. There's been ups and there's been downs. Through it all, I would like to say that the people at this division care. They believe in public service. They believe in doing the right thing. They are smart and they're talented. We have some of the premier water experts in the world working at this division, and I have been humbled to work alongside them. I will be moving on in January to new adventures while maintaining my obsession for water and my dedication to the division's mission. Utahns' lives are better because of the work done by the Utah Division of Water Resources. While the future will be increasingly challenging, I believe this division has what it takes to continually evolve and be a huge part of the water balance solution. No matter what music the tree rings write in the future, this division is up to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. Appreciate that, and I wish you could hum the tune. That was quite a declaration as well. I'm in shock. Yes, Director Millis.
We have thoroughly enjoyed having Josh work for us. He's done some great and incredible things with us and helped us out a lot on a number of things. And had good vision, and we wish him well as he moves on. Still got him for another month, so it's awesome.
On to every minute. All right. Our next agenda item is approval of the 2019 meeting schedule for this coming year. Don't have a copy of that with me unless it's, oh, it's in the front of the book? Okay. I got a mess there, Norm. I got tons of paper. Well, Eric's giving me his.
Great page.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Thank you. Yeah.
Chairman, I'd make a motion, we accept the meeting schedule for 2019.
There's a motion by Norm Johnson to accept the 2019 meeting schedule. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Farrell seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? Nobody's birthday is on any of those dates, so. All in favor of adopting the proposed 2019 meeting schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that visual aid there, Director Millis. Our next agenda item is a extremely important one, and it is the election of officers. And so I would entertain nominations.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, or I guess I make a nomination. I'd like to nominate Mr. Norman Johnson for the position of chair.
Norman Johnson is nominated as chair of Division of, or Board of Water Resources. I hear no other nominations. Is there a motion that nominations cease for chairman of the Board of Water Resources?
I would make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lemon makes the motion to cease nominations. Is there a second to the motion?
Seconded also.
I don't think you can do that.
I'll go ahead and second.
Ms. Tenner seconds the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Norm, on your new directorship here. I'd open nominations for vice chair of the board. Yes, Mr.
I
Farrell.
nominate Blaine Ibsen as vice chairman.
Very good. Mr. Ibsen is nominated as vice chairman of the Board of Water Resources. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for nominations to cease.
Move that motion.
Mr. Stevens moves that nomination cease. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Lemon seconds the motion. Motion is that nomination cease for vice chair. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Ibsen, on your vice chairmanship. And that takes care of that. Our next agenda item is Director Millis's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank you on behalf of the staff for your service as the chair of the board this past year, and let you know that the gavel that's sitting up there has your name on it. It's yours to take after the meeting, and a new one for Mr. Johnson next year. You bet. And just wanted to quickly give an update on the drought contingency planning on the Colorado River, which, boy, we thought we were coming close to conclusion at the end of this year. Could still happen, but Arizona is still having intrastate discussions amongst their water users as to how the agreements and everything that are required for that need to come together. And so they're telling us that they're not quite ready to sign the documents yet. We hope that they are able to finish things up soon, given what appears to be the beginning of a good water year. Last year kind of started out this way too, but we don't have the benefit of the reservoir storage that we had coming into last year, given that we don't know when this drought will ease and end. I think it's very important for us to keep up those efforts. And you know, sometimes we wonder if this is the climate change that people are talking about happening also. So there's a lot of unknowns out there. We think it's very wise for us to have a plan in our pocket to be able to mitigate the effects of the decreasing and decreased water supply. So with that, I believe that's all I have to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Millis, for your report. And I believe that concludes our business for the day. And so I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Ribson moves, we adjourn, and Mr. D. Hansen used to tell me that it's non-debatable, so meeting stands adjourned.